Welcome to Talking Security with Caliber. I'm your host, Tab. This is my co-host, Chad Butler, and we're here to talk about security. And I'm excited about this discussion because we spent a lot of time talking about autonomous vehicles and about that experience and about the security of it and that. And I want to dive into this because this is potentially a lot of fun. But I want to, before we dive into the security aspect of it, let's talk about just autonomous vehicles and like what that means. And we're in Arizona, so we think of it as Waymo, right?
Yeah,
like those.
We see them all over the place. Yep.
Spinning things on top, whatever that is,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And you know, sometimes they have somebody driving it. I imagine because they're testing, but often it's no driver and somebody in the back seat or a couple people in the back seat and that and we've had this discussion. You have not driven in a.
Not yet.
All right. So
I haven't taken my life or put my life in their hands
right.
yet.
So I've done it once. Can I tell you about that experience? Let me tell you about that because it was interesting because there's this mind that a lot of people have about autonomous vehicles. Like, I'm not getting in one, right? Mm-hmm. Like you'll hear people like, I'm not getting in one, and like if there's not a driver, I'm not going to do it. And whenever I hear that, it always makes me think of like the 1940s when people were like, wait, there's not going to be an elevator operator.
Yeah,
I am not getting on an elevator without an elevator op. You don't know what. Yeah, there's nobody operating that thing. Or maybe it's different, but our mindset as people is, we like control. Yeah. And when we get in the back of it. So I was with a friend of mine, and he was like, hey, you want to go in one? And I said, yeah, let's do it. And we weren't going anywhere, right? It was the experience of it, right? And so it picks us up, we get in there, and it's like, oh, wow, we're driving around, and there's this nobody in the car, right? I mean, nobody in the driver's seat. And for the most part, the car did very well, right? You'd almost think of it like a 16-year-old that just got their driver's license, right? Like that. That was my experience, at least at the time, where it was like very cautious. Like the speed limit says 35.
You're going 35.
We're going 35, right? Yeah. But the best part was, I'll remember this forever, is we had it take us through the Costco parking lot. And, it basically, it censors things, right? And so, what it doesn't censor or what it doesn't know to do is like, hey, there's people coming, but you got to inch out. You got to inch out. You got to inch out. You got to take your spot. Slowly take your spot. Go.
Yeah.
And so what it does is it waits. It says there's people coming. I got to wait. And so you got cars over here on this side that are like, hey, you're going to do your thing because you got the right of way.
And you're just
they're not doing anything.
Forever.
And all these people are walking, and it goes on for this like 3 minutes, which seems like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? And we're in the back of this car just laughing because we're like this awkward, like, hey, you do your thing. As it waited for like the perfect opening, cars over here honking at us like, would you go? And it's like, we can't go, and they're like, go, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good segue to how we even got to this discussion, right? About it was a Waymo in Tempe.
It just happened a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So talk about that.
So there was some footage out on the internet. Basically, a Waymo car went to turn down the street. There was some construction blockers, cones or barricades or whatever. And this Waymo car ended up turning the wrong way. It was driving the wrong way down the lane. And a police officer happened to be nearby, saw it, pulled it behind the car, flipped its lights on, and the Waymo car took off. And so I guess there was kind of a very anticlimactic pursuit finally pulled over. And so you see this body cam footage of the police officer, like knock on the window goes down, and then there's like some intercom, conversation with some guy in a call center probably, who had no idea what was going on. And yeah, so the police officer was trying to explain, hey, your car was driving the wrong way down the street, and you really need to fix that. And the guy's probably like, oh yeah, I'll go tell my CEO. Yeah. But yeah, it's happening. It's and the other thing that occurred with me recently, I was talking to my dad, and my dad owns a small business. He runs a small business in Utah, and he was in southern Utah for some reason, probably a golf tournament or something like this, and he talked to somebody who he knew drove from Salt Lake City to southern Utah, it's probably like, I don't know, 4 hours.
Yeah.
I've driven that many times, and it's really just straight freeway. It's boring. Some of it's like 85 miles per hour. And so it's a really boring stretch of highway, and people fall asleep. I've seen some of the most horrific wrecks I've seen in my life on that stretch of road. And so my dad's asking this guy, so how was your drive? He was like, oh, it's great. I love my Tesla. I slept the whole way. And my jaw just hits the floor. Like, oh, people have died from that. And that's kind of the thing. Like I think people don't realize there are various levels of autonomy, and some, there's 5 stages of autonomy. And where Teslas are at today is this level 3, where the driver is still responsible for the safe operation. And it got to the point where I think the NTSB had to go to them and say, you can't call this autopilot anymore, because people are putting it in autopilot mode and then going to sleep or scrolling Instagram or whatever, and they're getting in wrecks. And there's documented instances where people have been killed trusting the autopilot. And so now I think it's like advanced driver assist. So that's level 3. But then Waymo is, I think, if not completely level 4, it's close to level 4, which is considered high autonomy. But it's still not like level 5 is the autonomous vehicle can do everything a human driver could do. Like recognize that there's a construction barricade that changes the flow of traffic, and I need to adjust and not drive the wrong way down this lane. So I think that's the gap there. But yeah.
So it's so hard not to get into a non-security discussion about this.
Yeah.
And so what the hell? Let's just talk about it.
Let's go for it. Jump in.
Right. So, there's parts of it like making the shift. And maybe we can tie this into security, but making the shift like the average person, and there's somebody we know that's in security one time told me, it was like, I will never ever go in an autonomous vehicle.
Maybe because, me, I don't know.
No, it wasn't you.
I don't
know. Because I want control. Like, I want that control, and so part of it is I think there's just like anything, there's like the bleeding edge or the cutting edge, and then the late adopters and that. And, for me, if most of what I had to do was in a close proximity, I'd be an early adopter. I'd be like, can I do that for less money than it costs for me to buy my car, pay for my insurance, pay for gas, all of that? Mark me down, right? I mean, I understand you get like 800 kids, so you'd need like the Waymo version of a school bus in order to like get your butt around with your family, and I don't think they're ready for that. Where are you personally? Where are you at? I mean, are you like, I'm against it? Like, I don't want anything to do with it. I like looking at it from the outside.
I mean, I see a lot of potential in it. I mean, certainly things like, you doze off or whatever, and your car leaves the lane and the autonomy brings you back in, or the car in front of you slams on its brakes and you don't see it, and certainly there's tons of opportunity there.
But let's go Waymo, man. Like when you're like in the back seat and there's nobody in the passenger seat, are you ready to get in that?
Yes.
That was a resounding
Yes-ish.
yes.
So, and here's why. I think where we're at in the autonomous vehicle industry today is they're trying to deal with the things that occur naturally, right? The things that happen. A ball goes flying out in front of the road. Do you see it? Do you stop? A driver cuts you off. Do you see it and take action? And I think those are pretty predictable. Like I think as more and more driving time happens and the models get better and everything improves, it'll get better and better over time. And I think it will be safer over time. What they're not dealing with yet is the malicious attacks. Like I don't know, and I could be wrong here. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know of anybody who's like, yeah, we know how to deal with somebody just painted the lines differently on the road, or somebody who spun up a GPS jammer in our car. Like that's a different level of complexity to deal with and handle, because it's somebody maliciously doing something to you, trying to trick your sensors, trying to trick your vehicle to do something that you didn't intend for it to do. Mm-hmm. And it's in a lot of ways it's going back several decades, where when people first started developing applications, and the developers are like, yeah, I'll put this field and we'll expect the users to put something in there. And then the users started dumping like 10 megabytes worth of characters in there and smashing the stack and gaining control of the computer. The developers didn't think of that. And over time, they started to develop protections like that. So I think we're in that early stage where they're not really designing for the malicious attacks and that sort of thing. So that's what.
So this almost kind of goes back to like the early days of security, when you look at software security and you're like, we could do this to it, and people are like, then a developer's like, yeah, but nobody would do that. Why would anybody do that? It's like, well, that's why you hired us.
I would do it
because we did that. And so, you think about that, and you said GPS jammers, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you think about screwing with somebody's heart monitor or whatever it is that and like, why would you do something? All of those things just have to be considered, because you can't really look and say, why would somebody do that when somebody's in the back seat of your car and the car is going 65 miles an hour down the freeway, and you're like, well, we didn't anticipate that. So maybe those are the things that scare security people.
Yeah, or like you mentioned, I think a great example is the GPS jammers. There was an incident several years ago at an airport back east where they had GPS jammers causing issues with their avionics and their whatever they do to navigate planes. And what they found out if you're a driver driving for a company and you're in a fleet vehicle, they'll have GPS trackers on it to make sure that you're on route and all of that stuff. You're keeping speed limits. Well, what happens if you're driving and like you can go 2 miles out of the way and pick up your dry cleaning or whatever, and it saves you an hour? How do you make sure you're not tracked? Well, you can go on Alibaba or Temu or whatever, and there's these little GPS blockers or GPS jammers that you can plug into your accessory outlet in your car, and it's supposed to just affect your car, but obviously it didn't. It was affecting an airport at this time. And it turns out that was it. It was these people in these fleet vehicles that had these little tiny $5 GPS jammers that were wreaking havoc with the airport. And so it's stuff like that.
So it could be unintentional.
Yeah,
or it could be intentional. I mean, you think, who would do that, right? But I remember as a kid, we had moved to a different city, but I had two friends that ended up getting, like, they had the military police, because we were by a military base, military, local, state, because the two of them were walking by the freeway and went, hey, what do you think about picking up rocks and throwing them at the cars on the freeway? And it's like, okay, you got two stupid kids, and they were stupid for doing it, but what if you have just people with excess time, like kids or whatever that are just like, hey, you know what would be fun? Let's just, I think we can do this thing.
Or somebody who's doing it for social media likes. I mean, can you imagine, like, I've got a can of spray paint and I've got a Waymo vehicle driving around in a circle. I've got it in an endless loop and it can't get out.
Dude.
I would take that video and that would be great.
Yeah.
Let's see how many times we can get it to go around in a loop before somebody gets.
You see, you can't say stuff like that to me,
The wheels are turning.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm sorry, man. That sounds like a lot of fun. So, it's funny you mentioned. I gotta say this. You mentioned like level 5, where the car acts like the human, right? And and you said, somebody cuts you off. How does the car react? And I'm thinking to myself, at a level 5, can the car flip the driver off?
Can it flip it off? Yeah.
Yeah.
Honk.
But I want them to flip them off.
Yeah.
Like, I want that to be an option. Like, you pay extra money for Waymo, you put it in. Would you like the flip off option? Yeah. Please.
That's an add-on.
It's an add-on, right? I got somebody at Waymo right now going, flip off option, right? Well, but tell me, what do you think some of the more curious or more interesting security issues are besides what you've talked about?
So I think, I worked in the drone space, and drone is just another form of autonomous vehicles. We referred to them as flying robots. It's really what these cars are. They're just robots that have autonomous systems built in. One of the things that concern me, to go a little bit dark, is like these are large vehicles with a lot of kinetic energy behind them, and if somebody can manipulate those, especially in massive amounts or in quantity, they could wreak a lot of havoc. You think about the amount of damage that somebody could do by just driving a vehicle into something, or flying a drone into something. And most people think of drones as these little like DJIs that you can buy from Costco, but the ones you're talking about that can carry a 5-pound package, they're going to weigh 40 pounds or more. And when those are flying 200 miles per hour, like that's going to leave a mark. It's going to make for a bad day.
Or coming out of the plane, or coming out of the sky, or
yeah. Yep.
So we think about, maybe we don't. I do, right? Autonomous vehicles as like all the way, like level 5 or Waymo, right? Because most of us don't go like, oh, autonomous vehicles is a Tesla that has a level of it. And maybe for most people, the thought is that's where it starts, is Tesla.
Yeah.
But does it start earlier? Like the car that you drive right now has a level of autonomy, or where is there an opportunity for a malicious individual to hack an everyday car? I don't mean like a 1963 like beast. I mean like something that somebody's driving today.
Yeah, for sure. There was a case a few years ago where your cars usually have, at least modern cars have, tire pressure monitoring systems where it'll tell you if your tires are low, right? And that's, you've got something inside the tire that's monitoring the pressure and communicating back to your car's computer wirelessly. So somebody was able to attack or hack into that tire pressure monitoring system and get on the car's computer. And so you think about that, like, what could you do with that? Well, if it's kind of a dumb vehicle, maybe there's not much you can do. Maybe you can just manipulate the stereo system or whatever. But if it's the type of car that has driver assist, and now suddenly you can, apply the brakes when you're going 80 miles per hour down the freeway and, cause a 30-car pileup or whatever, that's a bigger deal. Or if it's completely autonomous and now you can take control of the steering and the brakes and the accelerator and everything else. So there's those situations. And that was a case where there just wasn't good separation in place. It all comes down to good security principles. If you've got a tire pressure monitoring system, you shouldn't be able to get hack into that and get all the way back to the computer that controls the brakes being depressed or the accelerator, the steering, or whatever. It's putting those trust boundaries in place and segmenting things so that if somebody does break in, they can't do something bad.
Yeah. So does this just come down to like good security practices, regardless of autonomous vehicle versus a website, right? I mean, but with the ramifications of something being much greater, of you slamming on brakes at 80 miles an hour than somebody,
Yeah, it's not just good security practices. I think it's just being smart. Like, I think the companies that are doing a good job with this right now are the ones that they realize that there's a lot outside of their control, and so they eliminate the variables as much as possible. So like Zipline, they're who I think of first when I think of drone delivery, because that's who I first came to contact with. They set up this facility in Rwanda where they can take blood for transfusions and deliver it to remote clinics where it might take them 3 or 4 hours to drive there, but they can get a drone delivery there in 10 or 15 minutes. That's the difference between somebody surviving and dying. And so they designed these drones that are very simple. They launch them with a catapult. It flies over there. They drop this box out with this really simple parachute, and it lands, and then they fly back and they catch it with like this this tether, and there's a hook on the drone, and they catch it with this tether. And when they first built it, it was literally fishing poles that strung this tether up. And so this is like, I think they realized, do you want to be landing in a clinic in Rwanda where who knows what kind of obstacles you're going to encounter, versus I'm just going to fly over it, get close enough, and drop a package with a parachute on it, and I'm going to bug out of there. Similar things, like there's a self-driving truck company right now that they're not even trying to solve the last mile thing. They've got depots right off the interstate, and somebody will drag the trailer over to them. They'll hook it up to an autonomous truck, and they'll drive right on the freeway. They probably stay in the right lane the whole time, drive the freeway, and then they pull off at the next depot, and then another human driver comes and picks that up and drags it to the ultimate destination. And so, like when you eliminate the variables and make it simple, there's less things that can go wrong, and it's, in my opinion, safer. So things like that, I think, are the way that
they're being handled right now.
Yeah.
It's just like eliminating the variables.
Yeah.
I can't help but like get into like all of the all of the reasons why companies should be concerned. Like, the whole, like, why would somebody do that?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about like corporate espionage. I know that's like, people might be thinking like, oh, you're getting, security people won't think I'm getting crazy, right? But
right.
The average person would be like, oh, you're like going off the deep end. But any reason to potentially be malicious is probably something, not probably, something to be concerned with, right?
Yeah.
And what bigger reason to be malicious than money, right? And it's just such a, I don't know, wild west when it comes to doing this. So
yeah, and it could be stealing the technology to give somebody a leg up. It could be doing something malicious, waiting for the right opportunity when we just want to wreak havoc because something's going down and we need a distraction. Or it could just be, like you want to have something in place for the right time when that one person is in that vehicle that you want to make go away. And now like maybe you just sit there for years and years and years and never do anything with it. I mean, like, this is what nation states do.
Now you're getting like you just went into the deep dark what ifs, right?
You softball.
There's like a movie in here, man. I mean, you think about that, like murder by autonomous vehicle. I want to honey, if you're watching, and I don't mean this, but you want to get rid of your wife, right?
Let's hope this doesn't happen, and then this podcast is going to come up, and we're going to call on.
Could you imagine that?
What did you know?
God, couldn't that be just horrible, man?
For the record,
Yeah.
you know nothing. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. God, could you imagine it? Like, look at this is proof.
I'm an idiot. My wife will confirm.
This is proof I'm an idiot. It's not proof I did anything wrong.
That's right.
But there's a lot of, I go back to like certain medical equipment, right? Where I don't know if I'm sure it still is a big deal, but when a lot of like devices came out, there was a lot of concerns about like, could you hack somebody's pacemaker?
Yeah. Could
you hack whatever? And I see similarities between like that and this where there's concern, and rightfully so, but to what level, and and that. So
and I mean, I sound like I'm a doomsday naysayer. I'm genuinely excited about the technology. I don't think it's my concern is I think people trust it too much. I think it's still early. I think it will save lives. But like one of the things I think these companies need to be thinking about is the perception. Like we were talking about this earlier, people like to be in control. And if you're in control, you tend to de-emphasize risks. If you're not in control, you emphasize or exaggerate them, which is why people overlook the statistics about dying in a car accident versus dying in a plane crash. But when the plane crash happens, everybody freaks out, and rightfully so. Like that.
But how many people are afraid to fly, but aren't afraid to drive?
Right. Yeah.
And maybe it's the control.
And so I think it will save lives.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, I think there are going to be situations where accidents will happen. Technology will fail. It'll make the wrong decision, and people will get hurt. Hopefully not too many people will die from it, but like there has to be this level setting of perception of where we're at today, where we're going, the promise of the technology, but it's going to take some time to get there.
Yeah. It's a fascinating discussion when you start thinking about all of the possibilities. And I think sometimes people will gravitate towards like the safety or security as something because just that it takes away their control or it gives them control. If I talk about this, it gives me more control over it. But
and everybody thinks they're an awesome driver, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But there may come. I don't know if there will come a day. I'm sure there will, where it's like, if you have a car in your possession, you're grandfathered, but as soon as that car goes away, then you're now like have to do the autonomous car, right?
That'll be
so
interesting. It'll
be like Mad Max, where like one dude's driving around like looking for the gas or whatever like that. But we should do a I don't know if you'd call it a podcast, but we should get in a Waymo and like go and do one of those things. And
you're gonna push me out of my comfort zone, huh?
Yeah. Maybe maybe what we could do. Here's an idea. We got Bill, the engineer, over here. Maybe we could like strap him onto the hood of a Waymo.
Okay.
And he could with a camera, and then we could be like mic'd up in the back.
Yeah.
And we could see if we could like get the car to do weird stuff.
Like Bill's shaking his head over there, right?
Yeah. I think it's shaking it up and down. Yes, sounds like a great idea. So, what do you think? You talked about like getting a Waymo to spin, right?
Uh-huh.
Or like get into a line and just go. What are the less nefarious things that a person might be able to do without finding themselves incarcerated?
I don't know. That seems pretty. Well, I don't know. It's got to be like whenever you're testing something, you have to have permission. You have to do it, and if it's your car, then you can grant yourself permission. So
we had to buy a car.
you got to buy a car to do it, I guess. So, or we could build one of those AWS, those like little racer cars that the deep racers. We can mess with one of those maybe.
And there's so many possibilities.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this whole thing went, right? But any final parting comments or thoughts on this particular subject?
I guess for me, it's just making sure that you're aware of where things are today. Like if somebody hears this and takes nothing else away from it, I would at least hope that you would say, okay, I'm not going to sleep in my Tesla while it drives for me, or be on my phone. It's not there yet. Like don't trust it that much. It's not ready to sleep in.
Though it did work for your dad's buddy, so you never know, man. But some people reach a certain age, and it doesn't matter if it's an autonomous vehicle or not; they're going to sleep.
That's true.
So it's like they're gone.
True.
I think my like parting thoughts is, I want to go do some research on LinkedIn or wherever, like security people that specialize in autonomous vehicles,
mm-hmm.
because that they're out there, right? Because it's like AI right now. It's like AI security people, and it's like, and I always love it when it's like, I'm an AI security guru, and it's like, I don't think AI has been around like in the form of what we consider, AI, like where anybody should be claiming guru status quite yet. And so, but I wonder if they're like who there is that's an autonomous vehicle security specialist, and we're right here in Arizona.
Yeah.
We should find that dude or dudette and get them in here and interview them.
Yeah.
And we can say, we won't say what company you're with.
They're few and far between. And I can tell you, when I was going into the drone space with a company that named, I was coming from the software side, and just finding hardware security people, embedded security people, was hard enough, because that's a lot of what is going on. You've got custom embedded systems, software running on those systems, all sorts of sensors. And what I found is that even though it's definitely a different specialization, a lot of it is the same. You've got sensors that are accepting input, whether it's a LiDAR sensor or a radar sensor or a GPS sensor, or a camera, a vision system. They're all just sources of input, and that autonomous system is just trying to figure out how to deal with it. And I think when things go wrong is when one sensor goes haywire and the system doesn't really know how to rationalize everything else that's going on. So like if GPS says you're here, and then 5 seconds later it says you're 50 feet away, what do you do with that? Do you correct and say, oh, I must have blown with the wind, so I'm going to correct for that. And if you do that in isolation with all of the other sensor data, then like that's how you take control of a drone or a car and drive it where you want it to go. You tell it, you thought you were over here, but now you're here. You need to correct, and then it corrects.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to try to go find that person. Just see if we can find somebody. Maybe we can find somebody at Waymo that'll talk to us.
Getting them to talk will be tough.
I got to do it, man.
I've got some stories I could tell you, but not on camera.
I got to do it, man. We may have Waymo luck trying to find. Sorry, man. Waymo. I had to do a dad joke, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But no, I think it'd be. I mean, it could be interesting to have that discussion. Yeah. It might be boring because we might get a lot of. I really can't talk about that.
Yeah,
but. Let's give that a ride. I mean, it's never stopped me from trying to reach out to everybody, right?
Yep.
So
maybe we could do it in our vehicle ride along.
We could
backseat of a Waymo car.
We could be in the back of a Waymo car interviewing
But probably
we do
violate
this?
some sort of terms of service.
I'm sure we are. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've ridden this course as long as we can, and
We gotta go
probably
talk to
everybody
lawyers
wishes
now.
that we were autonomous or human beings, so the conversation would be better. But here we are. So I'll close it out. Thank you. Well, first of all, anybody wants to get in touch with Chad and we talked about this before in other podcasts that we've done, and Chad and I worked together in the past when a part of Caliber Security Partners. Now he has his own company, and we do collaboration. We do stuff together, and it's great he co-hosts with me on this. But Mission InfoSec, how can anybody get a hold of you?
missioninfosec.com or email help@missioninfosec. I'm on LinkedIn, so if I can help, reach out.
And you know where to find me, Tab at calibersecurity.com or calibersecurity.com or LinkedIn, or there's only so many Tab Pierces out there. There's me, and there's a dude in Oklahoma that's in IT that's a little bit more of an introvert. So find us. We'd love to have those conversations. But I'll say this: thank you for being with us and joining us in this autonomous vehicle discussion. And we hope to see you again on the Talking Security with Caliber podcast.